Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Wanner. I'm the Director for the North Dakota Aeronautics Mission. Welcome to the 2026 Fly North Dakota Conference and the 2026 Aerial Applicator Safety Meeting. Just a couple notes when we start. We are recording these presentations, as we always do, to be able to provide these presentations online for all of our aerial applicators throughout the state. But I do want to just run through the agenda real quick and just kind of showcase some of the speakers we have here for you today. So after I give a couple comments, we're going to go into Bob Laus. He's the Aviation Safety Inspector from the FAA. Then we're going to go to Brian Rao from Medina Flying Service, so you can hear from one of our active aerial applicators. And then we're going to jump into some UAS topics from Steve Eglert and from the Northern Plains U.S. Test Site, and Aaron Theriot, the Operations Lead for the UND Research Institute for Autonomous Systems. They're going to talk about UAS topics and jump into some Part 108, some upcoming commercial UAS operation discussions that I think are going to be really relevant to this group moving forward as well. And then we're going to hear from John Potts from the Department of Agriculture. So we have some great speakers here for all of you today. And again, I appreciate all of you that came here in person to join us both for this safety meeting and also for the Fly North Dakota Conference here in Minot. To kick things off here, though, just to go over a couple things from our office at the Aeronautics Commission, as we always like to just briefly remind everybody about what the annual safety requirements are for our aerial applicators in the state of North Dakota. So first off, just I want to mention from the Department of Agriculture what their requirements are. To get the pesticide certification through NDSU, they require that all aerial applicator pilots attend the PASS program once every 3 years. And so that will enable your pesticide certification to continue for another 3 years. Another safety requirement, though, is with our office. And we actually have an annual requirement. And so you either need to attend PASS or you need to view this safety training that we provide at the Fly ND conference on an annual basis. And our requirement is also for the chief pilot of all of the licensed operators throughout the state, not necessarily the pilots. And so we encourage all pilots to have that annual safety training, but we do require the chief pilots receive it so that they can provide that training, that information that is important to the pilots that they work with. Are there any questions from this group on the safety requirements that are required in the state of North Dakota? Okay, a couple other reminders from our office. If you're an aerial applicator coming into our state, you must be registered, so you must be the aerial applicator business must actually be licensed within the state of North Dakota, so you either need to fly for a licensed business or you need to license your own business within our state, and all pilots must be listed on the license. All of the aircraft also need to be listed on the license. And if there's changes that occur throughout the season, because we know that happens, right? We have many of our businesses bring in pilots from out of state, they bring in aircraft from out of the state. Completely fine, just contact Janelle in our office and make sure that she's aware of who the pilots are and which aircraft are to be included within your license. Our complaint process, we also like to make sure our aerial applicators are aware of kind of how that process works within our office, because we can really tell when our sprayers are out and about throughout the summer, because the phone calls start picking up in our office. And so we do receive some complaints, and when we do, we guide them to our website, because the first thing that we want to ensure is that the public is aware of what you are going through. We like to put them in the shoes of our aerial applicators, and so we really kind of go through kind of an educational process with them in regards to what is legal, what the aerial applicators are trying to do, and for the most part, again, they're not trying to harass. There's just certain things that they have to do in the business that they are conducting. But if there are legitimate concerns that we need to be aware of, that we need to be addressing with the aerial applicators, we do want to know what those things are. So again, we're trying to educate the public on the legal operations that our aerial applicators can do, the things that, again, the benefits that our aerial applicators provide to our farming community, but at the same time, really trying to identify if there are things that we do need to address, whether it's with the FSDO office, with the aerial applicators themselves, or in some cases, if the sheriff's office does need to be involved. Very rare cases. And most of the complaints that we do get deal, for obvious reasons, with low flights that occur directly over houses. And so we just continually remind our aerial applicators that is continually, again, a key complaint. So make sure you're communicating effectively with the farmers or the individuals around your area. If you can obviously avoid houses where you can, please obviously do that. If you can't, communicating with those individuals because of how the setup is onto that field is just critically important. Because again, we've always found communication is key. If we're communicating with individuals, if they're aware, if there's transparency, that usually leads to less issues. Some reminders about guy wire marking. A couple years ago, we did have some fatal accidents in our state from some of our pilots hitting some guy wires. We teamed up with the Aerial Applicator Association within the state to provide some guy wire training in Fargo a couple years ago. We'd be obviously interested at some point in time maybe doing that again, but we just want to continue to remind our aerial applicators to be monitoring the areas that you are flying, to go and check and make sure that there are any guy wires or any sort of towers, any sort of electrical wires in those vicinity of your spraying operations. If you have any concerns, once again, about any poles, any wires, any transmission lines, any guy wires that are unmarked or inherently unsafe in your opinion, we just encourage you to contact the distribution cooperatives throughout the state, because they have been very interested in partnering with our aerial applicators when the communication to them has provided them with the information to denote exactly where in the field that they can help and provide some of the safety implementations, whether it's marking those guy wires in a better way once they're out in the field. So again, I just encourage our aerial applicators to communicate when you identify areas of safety concern. This is our 4th year where NDs can request an aerial applicator license. Some of those safety standards, just for educating purposes for those who are maybe unaware of what the requirements are. Right now, we have a maximum operating weight for our drones for 500 pounds. Operator requirements, so if you're operating, you need to hold a Part 137, or you need to be operating underneath a Part 137 license. You need to have your remote pilot license. You have to have an employed chief pilot. The safety meeting requirements I mentioned previously still apply to you. If there's any pilots that are flying underneath that license, again, they need to have the remote pilot license. They need to have at least 10 hours of supervised flights while conducting aerial application. And then you need to have your pesticide certification from NDSU. So some of the same requirements in the manned world, but the qualifications have been lowered just because obviously the safety and risk case is significantly lower for those unmanned operations. And if anybody is interested in the process, Janelle has done an incredible job in our office. She's our licensing specialist in working with the FAA and working with the Department of Agriculture to kind of really provide a map, if you will, for how somebody would become a manned aerial applicator or an unmanned operator, whether that's the FAA requirements, the pesticides certifications, and then what requirements we have at the state. This looks somewhat complicated, but again, it kind of guides everybody through the whole process depending upon what their end result is. And so depending, again, upon what your goal is, if your goal is to actually own a business, that might be a different route than if your goal is just to be hired as an aerial applicator, unmanned operator for a company as well. And so, if you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help and guide people through the process to make sure that you're operating legally and safely at the end of the day. And just a quick kind of statistic, fun statistical chart here to show you of the unmanned aerial applicator numbers in our state. So once again, we came out in 2022 with the initial license process for unmanned operators, knowing there was interest in them being able to operate in the state. We had 2 in 2022, and here we are now in 2025. We actually have 33 licensed unmanned operators flying 52 aircraft, and there's 60 unmanned pilots listed on those licenses. And so we went from 6,000 acres being sprayed back in 2022 to 185,000 acres in 2025. And so kind of exciting to see some growth in the aerial applicator space, and we expect that to continue here moving into the future as well. Some additional statistics that we like to showcase too are what are the manned aerial applicator numbers in North Dakota. We have been seeing a decline in numbers going all the way back to the 80s, where we used to have 200 to 225 operators in the state. Right now we're down to about 78 manned aerial applicators. They're utilizing 161 aircraft, 160 pilots. And so we're kind of leveling off now. There's been a lot of changes in the type of aircraft over time. We're obviously using larger aircraft, larger operations in general. There's been some businesses that have joined together over time, and so I expect this to continue to level off, as we move forward. But when you look at the acres sprayed again from where we were in the past, where we are now, they've stayed the same, or in some cases have grown. So 2024 was actually the record year that we had, where 5.5 million acres were sprayed throughout the state from our manned aerial applicators. Last year in 2025, we had 4.7 million acres. And obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into play here, most of all being whether it's a wet or a dry season. 2024 was a wetter season in our state, which kind of led to that record, but kind of fun to see these statistics. And again, the last 4 years have been above the average, which is around 3.8 million acres being sprayed in the state. So again, we did seeing about 185,000 acres there from the unmanned guys. We're really excited to see the increases in acres there, but again, a large number of the acres being sprayed in our state are still from our manned guys, which is going to continue moving forward. Quick update on some of the website tools that we have. If you go on the North Dakota Aeronautics Commission website, we have a Met Towers map available for all of you to go on and take a look at. Going all the way back to the 2011 legislative session, there was actually some legislation passed at the state level to provide some additional protections for our aerial applicators, particularly providing information related to where the Met Towers are located. And these are the towers that are gauging and I guess gathering information on the wind speeds in these certain areas where there might be future wind towers actually being established. But these towers are under 200 feet, and so they're not necessarily marked on your sectionals, or that information isn't available on where they're at, and they could be temporary, right? They could be out there one day and the next day they're gone, and so it's important for us to continue to make sure that you have the information available to you where you can go on to a website and you can see where these Met Towers are at any given moment. So that information is still available on our website. And something that we're also really excited to share is something that the Department of Agriculture has been working on over the last couple of years with the enhancements of GIS mapping and imagery. You can go on their website and you can see where the apiaries are, where the vineyards are, the organic crops, and where the towers that are over 200 feet are located throughout the state too. So really another great resource for all aerial applicators as you're kind of planning your flights and in your season ahead. Yeah.
How often is that map updated?
So I believe that the map, and speaking with the Department of Agriculture, I think it's about once a month where they're pulling data from different resources. So it could be from the FAA website, so at least once a month is what I've been told. It may be more for the apiaries and the vineyards because that's information the Department of Agriculture has. But the towers, I think, is once a month. So I would say at least once a month it's being updated. But it's a good question. I wouldn't expect, something like this. I wouldn't say it's a daily updated. Yep. Something else just want to make all of you aware of are the weather cameras that have been installed throughout the state. So this is a list of the 16 different airports that now have FAA certified weather cameras that have been installed in North Dakota. Again, the weather isn't necessarily certified, but the cameras are placed on the FAA's website. It's a program that began in Alaska, and now it's kind of shifting to the continental states. And just another piece of information for all of us, including aerial applicators. Some of these airports don't necessarily have automated weather information available, and so having that visual reference of what is actually happening on site is beneficial in a lot of cases. It's a picture that's taken every 5 minutes from northwest, south, and east, and so that just some additional information for U.S. pilots as you're planning your flights around the state. We're encouraging more airports to install cameras as well. And so if you have an airport near you that doesn't have one, that might be interested in installing one, make sure they reach out to us. And there is grant funding that our office can provide in this space as well. So a recap on some of the North Dakota aircraft accidents. Looking back at our last year in calendar year 2025, we actually had 4 aviation accidents in the state that were recorded by the NTSB. We're happy to report that there were no fatalities. We have not seen fatalities since 2023, so it's been 2 years, which is exceptional. We want that to obviously continue moving forward. 3 of the accidents had no injuries. We had 1 accident resulting in 1 major injury. And then the type of operation. So out of those 4 accidents that happened in our state last year, 2 of them were Part 91 personal flight ops, but there were 2 Part 137 aerial applicator flights, which I believe Brian will be speaking to later on in his presentation. But some other information about those flights, all those flights were day VFR, and they were all fixed wing aircraft. And so I really encourage you to go and check out the NTSB website. It has all the information and reports on the accidents that have happened, not just last year, but in all the years prior. It's always kind of nice to go and check out and learn about the accidents that have occurred in North Dakota or in other states as well, just to kind of learn from what has happened in those instances. One of the last things I wanted to mention is we do have, as always, pavement projects planned, pavement rehabilitation projects planned throughout the state. We have 2 major ones where we expect the runways to be closed for a larger duration of time at Cooperstown and Wishick. We have some larger apron and taxiway work happening in Langdon and Mandan, and then some seal coats are also happening at these listed airports. And so, as always, check NOTAMs, plan ahead. There obviously can be some impacts at airports. We have 1 construction season. I know we all get frustrated sometimes, not just on the roads, but on our airports. We see a lot of orange sometimes, but we try to get in and get out and get these projects done so we can get these airports maintained and our infrastructure solid for the near and long-term future. And so, again, just check NOTAMs and plan ahead.
Thank you, Kyle, and my name is Robert Laux, or Bob. I'm an aviation safety inspector out of the Fargo Flight Standards Office for the FAA. I'm an operations inspector, so I mean as pilot. And so what I'm going to present is a couple things that we have talked about in the office: inspectors, maintenance inspectors, our management, and ops inspectors, and a couple of just reminders as you go through. And if you have questions or anything, just raise your hand, and I'm sure they can relay. I can't hear anybody outside of the speaker, so if there are questions, just relay that through Kyle or Janelle, and we'll get those answered. So, all right, so what we're going to go through, just a couple of things here that touched on regulations and what you might be seeing out there, or maybe what you may be moving toward in the future. So we'll just touch on a little bit of distracted application and some recommendations for that. Talk about the Air Tractor 802 a little bit, and if you're looking at upgrading, what that looks like as far as what training and certification you might need for that. We'll touch on some airworthiness directives that comes down from our maintenance inspectors as far as some of the documentation requirements for that. And then last, we'll talk about our national airspace system as we operate and do our job in there. First thing, so distracted application, just like driving, just like everyday life, we all have phones and tablets and all kinds of tools we can use to do our job and live our lives. So if you've gone through and if you've gotten in an upgraded avionics package or a new aircraft or something where you have maybe a higher level of technology in your aircraft, make sure the recommendation is get as familiar with that as you can, not just academically, right? We're all going to read the manual and make sure that we understand what's going on with it, but take the time, plug it in, push the buttons, so when you get yourself in position here in the field or you're transiting or maybe you're actually doing the work, you don't get lost in the technology. And one of the first questions is, that you can ask is, well, what is it doing now? Where is it going? What's happening? When you're trying to do the job. So familiarity, make sure you take that hands-on time, push those buttons. I think we've all been there as we understand the new technology that is available to us. So that's one recommendation. Another thing is the connectivity, right? Is it a situation when you're flying, can you leave the communications behind? Can you leave the phone behind? Can you focus only on the flying? And understand that may not be a practical solution for most of you, but there's an airplane mode for a reason. And if we're flying, where's our focus? It should be on the work at hand, especially low altitude, high speed, which is your typical operating environment. But if there's communications you need to do between, the folks who load your aircraft, or maybe other pilots that are working for you, or, people that are requesting work to be done, you have a standard way of communicating. Hey, we won't talk about this until we get back on the ramp. Or we're gonna have a pre-brief of the plan for the day, and then here's the plan, here's the timing, and then here's the, the abnormal situation. But having the opportunity to talk with the other people within your operation, hey, how's this going to work? Things can be dynamic because of weather or other risks that we're operating in. So, what have you done to familiarize yourself and make sure the communication is clear between you and everyone that you're working with? And then that would obviously apply for the air, but also ground operations. So, if you're working out of an airport that has maybe transient aircraft, understanding that maybe they might be blocking where you want to get to, whether it's fuel or like loading your product or anything that else is going along. So who's going to let you know about that? Make sure those ground operations are set forth, and then you're understanding, if there is going to be a challenge, how you're going to deal with it.